Before we get started, I want to read a brief biography on each of our distinguished honorees. The full biography is in your program, but I want to start here with YSG. Youngsuk is the chairman of Elsevier. I always mess up. Elsevier Management Committee and head of global academic and customer relations. He leads the development of information solutions that are transforming the scientific, technical, and medical industry. He was recently elected to serve as the president of the International Publishers Association. He was also chief operating officer of Ingram Book Group, where he founded Lightning Source, which was the first ever print-on-demand distributor and e-book services provider. He was also president and chief operating officer at Random House. He's also served on numerous charitable, educational, and industry boards. And then we have Daniel Dae Kim. He has enjoyed a successful career on the stage, the TV, and the film. And through the diversity of his roles, he continues to expand the public's perception of the Asian American man. And currently, you can watch him as Chin Ho Kelly on Hawaii Five-0, and he's played the King of Siam in The King and I at London's world-renowned Royal Albert Hall. How about that? But he might be best known to audiences for his portrayal as Jin on Lost. Who didn't love that show? I cried when it ended. He shared a Screen Actors Guild Award for Best Ensemble and has been honored with many individual achievement awards for his acting and his contributions in the arts and entertainment industry. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Peter Lee. Dr. Lee is Professor Emeritus in Korean and Comparative Literature at UCLA. He has 20 books to his credit and is the leader in scholar of the field of Korean literature. He is credited with single-handedly creating this Korean literature field in the West. And that's not easy to do. And he's placed Korean literature within the larger study of comparative literature in the West. He's also developed his own body of translated Korean works, most of which were not even previously available in any Western languages. Dr. Lee has received many honors for his work and has been recognized with Korea's most prestigious national awards, including the President's Award. He has multiple degrees from a number of prestigious universities and institutions. I can't even name them all. He has taught at many of them as well. And while he retired officially a few years ago, he remains very active, advising students and in his own research and publication. Ladies and gentlemen, can we ask for a more distinguished panel here this afternoon? Dr. Lee, I'm going to start with you. What does it mean to you to be here today, to be recognized as a leader in your field among Korean Americans, and being here to celebrate with your fellow Korean Americans?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank the KEI for recognizing my work and to say that in the past 47 years, I have witnessed the field growing from 1% to some 20 junior scholars. So I began teaching in 1960, and from 1960 to 1987, I was the only tenured professor in the U.S. And then after that, that the openings were made available, and young colleagues are now, actively teaching both classical and modern Korean literature. So I think it's very gratifying, that to see that the field has expanded over the 47 years, you see, from 1% to some 20. So that's the growth of the field that I am proud of.
Wonderful. And Daniel Dae Kim, I'm going to go to you next. You'll mention in the video you took a risk, and how do you view the risk you took, and how did you break through? Did you have a moment in your career or a moment you said, okay, I'm going to go for this and I'm not turning back?
First of all, thanks to the KEI for having me here. It's a real honor and a thrill. I love coming to Washington and being amongst people like yourselves, and hopefully I get a chance to talk and meet a lot of you later. But to answer your question, I don't necessarily feel like I had one particular breakthrough. when Lost first happened, people came up to me and said, "Wow, how does it feel being an overnight success?" And I thought, if that's overnight, that was a heck of a long night. And thank you, Yul, for that incredible tribute. It's very strange to watch you talk about me like that and have you be in the same room. I really do feel like this is a continuing journey, and I'm sure many people in this room kind of share the same idea about their careers, that it's not about a plateau or kind of reaching somewhere. It's about just continuing to grow and building a career that's lifelong.
Wonderful. Mr. Chi, there are a lot of people who credit you with being a mentor, and you've influenced many lives. When you were finding your path, who influenced you, and did you find it hard to find other Korean Americans to look up to when you were pursuing your goals?
Yeah, let me add my thanks to KEI also first, because it's a great honor to be sharing the podium here with these people. I often tell people that it's really about people and not about the place or the thing that we do. The most important influence that I got was obviously from my own family, from my mom and dad, and now my wife and children who teach me every day just by being a father. But along the way, I tell the world that I am the luckiest person you'll meet in your life, by far, because I came across these people along my life that had absolutely no reason to have to pay attention to me, but they did. And they gave me opportunities that were not available otherwise without their hand. Bronson Ingram, who is not known to any of you, but he was kind of like my American father, my best friend's father, and coming from the South, still at a time when South was not exactly the most open society as far as race is concerned. He made sure that I would be taken to places that no other person other than Caucasian would be present, just to make a point. And he wanted me to see that world so that I could be part of that world one day. And there are people like that dotted throughout my life, and it's just too many to name. And I think that is very much an American psychology. It's an American culture. I've lived in 16 countries, and I can't find another one, including our own Korea, where society can be so open and so generous. So it was hard. There wasn't any Korean American role model per se at that time, nor, frankly, I think I even was looking for one. I was really looking for a role model in general, and they were very generously numerous.
And is that why you, in turn, have become a mentor yourself and a role model?
Yes, I think. I don't think it was designed that way. But I think, like most of you out there, when you see somebody that has either passion or talent or some conviction, you want to be of help as a professor, as a performer, as parent, as friends. And I think I just saw a lot of really passionate and people with convictions that I thought I could make a small difference, and it kind of snowballed into what it is today.
And Dr. Lee, what about you? What are some of the challenges you faced in your career being a Korean American as you were coming up in your field, and especially because you were such a pioneer? There was no one else like you.
Yes, but of course, when I went to Yale Graduate School, I met for the first time scholars who are polyglots, who can read 20 languages and, and so on. And so, although I knew by then literary Chinese, Japanese, English, French and Latin, but then still, you see, I had to study more languages, such as Italian and German and so on. And then I met a scholar who was my advisor, whose name is Rene Werek, who was a Sterling professor of comparative literature at Yale. And then he somehow dissuaded me from pursuing a comparative study of Western literature to that of East Asian literature, because he told me that Korean literature is almost unknown at that time. See? And so he urged me to write papers on Korean subject, and then on comparative East Asian literature, and then of course I moved on to do a comparative study of East Asian and Western literature, because I mean, to me it's intellectually challenging and rewarding, and the happiest moment for me as a scholar is to discover the differences at the point of maximum resemblance.
I hope you're taking notes. Write that one down. All right, thank you so much. And Dan, I want to ask you the same question. The challenges being an Asian American, a Korean American in your very competitive field.
You know, I think in every field there are challenges, and there are many that are specific to being Korean American. But you know, I think that something that you touched on was really an important point, and that is, for people with passion, for people with drive, and for people with a vision, you're going to find role models, regardless of whether they're Korean American, Asian American, whatever color they are. You're going to find the people that you admire, and you're gonna try your best to kind of emulate and maybe even surpass their careers. In terms of challenges for Korean Americans, yes, there are some. But I think that's why it's really important to have events like this, where people who are making their mark in their individual fields are recognized and they come together collectively to kind of celebrate achievements. And this is, I think, one of the great highlights of being in a career like ours. And I'm hoping that it's just a small part of what's to come.
Would you say, though, it was very challenging?
Yes, absolutely. No question. You know, there aren't that many role models out there for there was George Takei and a handful of others, Sesu Hayakawa and some of the chop suey circuit performers, and their achievements are not to be disrespected. I really do feel like they made their mark in a time when it was incredibly hostile for Asian American performers, and so the challenges still exist, but I really do think it's getting better.
And I want to ask you the same question, because your career is also very competitive, and to break through and to get into a position where you're in a leadership role and influencing other people. How challenging was that for you as a Korean American?
I'm not sure it was necessarily more challenging because I was Korean American, but you just have to get lucky meeting the right people along the way, and I did. I met some phenomenal people along the way who just kind of wanted to take a chance. And it all started when I came to America to study. I mean, imagine a Korean person coming from Africa, doesn't speak English, and they give you full scholarship to study in America, the best education institution in the world. How do you explain that otherwise, right? So America takes chances on people like this, and I think it's not that luck doesn't cross our path all the time, because they do. It's just a question of how hard you work to grab them as they pass and ride with it. And what I learned was through these role models how they do it, so I could do it a bit better or easier than I would on my own. But I think being a Korean American sometimes actually helped, because I was different. It was easier to stand out because it was more, physically distinguishable. And I have to say, I'm brutally honest, that I did take advantage of those occasions as well, where my difference was, it was going to be an advantage. And fortunately, it wasn't just a fleeting moment. It could last.
You mentioned when luck goes by, an opportunity to grasp onto that. What are the methods? Because some people aren't as lucky as you are. You know what I mean? So how do you recognize? I think people want to know. Yes, people always say don't wait for opportunity to knock. Make sure you go bang down the door.
I'll write that in a book and make Peter's 21st book. I had my first boss at work, and when I was a banker, was a very, very successful person who played the global financial market extremely well from Geneva, New York, and Tokyo. And he said something, I think it's a little bit extreme, but he said, everything happens in 1 hour of the day. The problem is that you don't know which hour of the day it is. So if you work 8 hours a day like most of us are expected to do, then there's 1 in 3 chances that you'll be there when it crosses. If you work 12 hours a day, you have 1 in 2 chances. But if you work 24 hours a day, you'll always be there when it crosses. Now, he didn't say that to me so that I would work 24 hours a day, but he taught me to have partnership with 3 other people, to be always alert for those 24 hours a day, and we were passing batons, but we were there 24 hours a day to make it happen. And I know those of you who are from the State Department knows that's how it happens in diplomacy too. You can't do it all yourself. You just keep passing on to people you trust, and it's a collaboration. And those were the kind of lessons I think that got me a little bit lucky.
I don't think it's just luck, though, let me tell you right now. All right. Dr. Lee, why do you think it's so important to continue to give back to our community, not just the Korean American community, but the community at whole?
Well, I mean, first of all, more than 2/3 of my students have been Korean Americans. And I have taught them to work very hard and keep high quality and so on. And then, of course, in my case, only through my publication, I am in contact with the general reader, students, and scholars. See? So I have been keeping, keep on writing books which I consider to be important issues, and so hopefully the younger generation of scholars and the general readers will find that there are something interesting and useful in reading my books. Yeah.
Daniel, what about you? The same question about being connected, especially because there are so many who look up to you. And as you mentioned, not just Korean Americans, but there are a lot of young people who look up to you now. And that's a lot of pressure, too, I'm sure.
I honestly, I don't really feel the pressure of it so much. But the thing that I'm always aware of is that, all of my achievements, and I think all of our achievements, if I may speak for us collectively, they rest on the shoulders of the people who came before us.
That's right.
And so, without their work, we wouldn't be here today. And I think that's the recognition that I have going forward. And that's why I feel like it's important to give back, quote unquote. I just think, by speaking about our experiences and by making yourself available to those people who are making the same journey, it's really important to give us a context and a sense of place. And so we know where we're going from here.
Do you think there are any specific needs in our community?
Oh, yes.
What talk about that.
I think that, just to take Daniel's point forward a little bit, I think the generation that first came to America, the largest part came in the 70s and 80s. They came, and I call them manual generation because they had to do things with their hands. Grocery stores, gas stations, laundry shops. That's what they did, even though they were terribly well educated and were capable of doing a lot more for the society. But that's what they did so that they could teach the next generation to be well educated, to have a Yale degree, to have a Georgetown degree, and go on to become a professional. And hence, the generation you see, most of my contemporaries and perhaps 10 years down, is the professional generation. We're now entering the next generation where our children have to become the civic generation. I think we're sitting at this place, and you have honored us because we look like exceptions, because they're trailblazers. But we want many, many, many people to be doing what we do. And that generation has to go into politics. They have to go into clergy, to media, to scholarship. This is where we are going to grow as an immigrant society in America, to go from the manual generation to the professional, then to the civic generation, so that there could be many of Daniels on screen, many of you on news. Media is very important, and I think that's how we can have our share of influence in how this country is going to go forward as a nation, to have a voice. So I do emphasize that that's the message I'd like young people to get, is to think beyond the professional career of their own and to think civic engagement.
How do we do that? How do we engage? Because I think that people, especially in our community, would say there are not enough people who want to be on the front lines, who want to be the face in front of the issue, the cause. There are not enough people who are running for elected office.
I think there are. Just it's not our time yet. They're being groomed. And I think Sam just left here, but Sam Yoon is an example of someone who took the risk of running for a council position, first Asian ever to run in Boston, and was elected twice. He ran for the mayor, didn't make it, but that set some kind of a new trend, and there are more councilmen elected in this past election in November than ever by, I think, a factor of 2, I believe. I'm not sure if the statistic is correct, but that's what's happening, and once it gets going, it's going to be a real momentum. And I'm very optimistic. I was first of 2 vice presidents on Wall Street back in those days. Now there must be, 10,000 of them on Wall Street? Just imagine what role we're going to have, not just in elected office, but in front of camera like you, and people who are in positions of moral suasion and whatnot. So I'm very optimistic about it.
All right. Dr. Lee, what advice would you give young people? You said many students, Korean Americans and others who are in your class, to stay relevant.
That's right. Well, stay relevant. Of course, we have to define the word relevant in some sense, but
again, no pen.
Yeah. I mean, particularly to my students who are studying Korean literature. Of course, they have to work hard, and they have to overcome the terrible solitude of academic research and translation, and they just have to keep on going. But the important thing is that the younger generation of scholars are mostly interested in modern literature, not classical, because in order to read and write about it, one has to have a very arduous training in literary Chinese, and that takes maybe 4 to 8 years, you see, and then so that because they are not going through that stage, they can only read modern Korean, not classical Korean. So I have been trying to urge them, to take up on this hard work of learning to read literary Chinese, and of course late Middle Korean and early modern Korean and so on, so that they will be able to in turn train their students in not only modern but also classical literature, because classical literature occupies almost 95% of the extant literature in Korea. So that if one does not read classical literature, then that person is dealing only with 5% of Korea's literary tradition.
Thank you. And I think that can be an analogy for many other things about reading the classics and going back to your past to learn more about your future.
Important, yes.
Daniel, what about advice for people who are trying to get into your field?
Gosh, it's hard to say because there are so many different paths.
Handsome, no? You have to be handsome.
Right. Thank you, I think. you know, that's the thing. Like, you know, growing up Korean American, there was a particular path I was told to take, and that is to study hard, go to a good college, you know, become a professional. And, you know, it's nice to know, it's reassuring in some ways and limiting in others to know that there is that ladder and that path that one can take to kind of make your contribution to society. But, you know, in my profession, you know, my dad likes to tell me that he wasted all of my education because you don't need to graduate from college. You don't need to graduate from high school to do what I do. You know, the one thing that I will say, you know, about education, I have a lot of things to say about education, but in my case, I will say that it does help me. Mm-hmm. Education does help me because, you know, one thing I think all of us have in common here is our level of education, and I think. Well, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but
no, please do. People want you to go off on a tangent.
No, but I will say that education does help me just to again put my world in, to have a point of view about the world that we live in, mm-hmm. and to have a sense of a tradition of literature, a tradition of the arts, a tradition of politics, and understanding all of those things informs the choices I make as an actor every day. You know, because what is entertainment? Entertainment is definitely a product of a time and place. Lost was that way. You know, one could talk about a zeitgeist of and how a particular show or any popular entertainment fits into it. And Hawaii Five-0 is very similar. There are reasons for particular television show success at a particular time, mm-hmm. and I think it helps an actor to be aware of those things in order to help tell a story ultimately. Mm-hmm. And in terms of education, you know, to touch on YS's point, I really feel like, as a demographic, Korean Americans are incredibly educated people. And now the question is, what are we going to do with all that education? You know, is it enough to kind of be a doctor? Is it enough to become a lawyer or an engineer? Those are all incredibly worthy. But I would challenge all of us to say, how can we contribute to society at a greater level, and how can we start taking all of the things that we've learned and help affecting change or making our mark in a systemic way? And that I think is the next step for all of us as Korean Americans, to start asking those kinds of questions. In America today, it seems like the emphasis seems to be on having an opinion. You look at all of the media and, you know, how biased every network seems to be now. But I don't think it's enough to have an opinion. I think it's important to have an informed opinion, and I think that if we can, and because of all of our education, I think that gives us that basis to have an opinion, and I hope our opinion gets heard. Off the soapbox now.
Any practical advice for? I mean, not that was, but for people who want to get into acting.
Oh, well.
Because, you know, people want to know
that
these
the question?
things. People want to know. I mean, obviously, the education piece is, and I think the call to civic duty that we've heard here on the stage, mm-hmm. but I think people want to get a glimpse into mm-hmm. that world, part of the world that we don't know about.
I'm going to give you a boring but sincere answer.
Okay.
It's hard work.
Yeah.
It really is, you know. YS talks a lot about luck, and one thing that someone said to me about luck that I always remember is that luck is the intersection of hard work and opportunity. And so, you know, you don't get quote unquote lucky without being ready for your luck. You know, you'll never know when an opportunity that you have passes you by because you're not ready for it. It will just seem like another thing. But when you get elevated because you happen to be at the right place, at the right time, with the right tools, then it changes your life. So in my profession in particular, there are so many variables that are beyond my control. How I look, you know, what's popular at that moment in the culture. So I think it behooves anyone who wants to do what I do to be as prepared as possible. Mm-hmm. So if and when that lightning in a bottle, you know, tries to enter, that you're there to catch it, you know, and that's... I'm sorry, it sounds a little cliche,
I don't think that was a boring answer.
True.
That was not a boring answer at all. Thank you very much.
True.
And YS, share some of your most valuable life lessons that you've learned on your path that you can share with us. We've heard about the hard work and opportunity, education, and the idea of becoming more than just a professional, but really participating in our process in this country, but what other life lessons that we can hold on to today that we can take with us throughout our lives?
I don't want people to leave the room thinking that somehow I'm critical of professionals. I think one of the reasons why I say I've been so fortunate to meet a great deal of mentors ahead of me was not because of what they accomplished. It's not the post of ambassador or congressman or CEO or whatnot. It's what they did with that accomplishment. That's the one lesson I would like to add by saying the people I admire aren't the people who became rich or became famous. It's the people who did some great things that have sustainable, lasting impact on someone other than themselves with that. Which is, I think, the reason why Daniel is a role model. It's not just that he became famous. It's how he uses his fame to send a message, be a role model. I think that all of you can understand what I'm trying to say, because all of us can accomplish some great one thing and become known for it. But to sustain it, that's the real test, right? It's what you do with it. What you do with all that wealth or with that fame, with that power, the influence. And I'd like to leave that as probably the most meaningful thing I learned from my mentors.
Feel the pressure. Do you feel the pressure? In your history, is there anything that you would like to share in the work that you've done and the people you've encountered? I'm sure there are so many and so many stories.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, my role models were scholars in my field, you know, who read many languages and literatures, and I was trying to follow their examples. And of course, you know that the foremost comparatist when I was in graduate school were mostly European refugees who fled totalitarian regimes and who came to the United States because you know that well-known institutions offered them jobs. So they have their own examples, you know, that they told me, and then of course, you know, I was one of the earliest students to study the field, and I tried hard to follow the examples. Now, for example, one of my professors at Yale told us in the seminar that we should attempt to read 3 books a day.
A day?
And we all. And
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
so some of us tried that.
Really?
I mean, if not 3, at least 1 book a day. You know, that, I mean, that's
day.
accomplishment too.
That
So,
is.
of course,
God,
depending
2
upon,
pages for me.
depending upon the kind of book
Yeah.
book you are dealing with. You know. Yeah. So, I think I learned a great deal from my advisors and the teachers, and then also I was, you know, in the practice of writing to the poets and fiction writers whom I liked, and so I met a number of first-rate American poets, such as Wallace Stevens, and I used to go and visit him from New Haven to Hartford, where he was the vice president of Hartford Accident and Indemnity Company. But he was one of the foremost American poets, you know, about whom now so many books have been written. See? And of course, I met people like Robert Penn Warren and W.H. Auden, and so number of writers who also give me, some hints about my pursuit in literature. Mm-hmm. Yes, and I did the same thing when I was studying in Europe, and so from those examples, so because as Dan said, that we stand on the shoulders of giants, so we must not forget that, and we try, to show, our examples to younger generations that they should work hard, consistent, and devoted. Yeah.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. Daniel, what's next for your journey in your career? Can you share if you're working on any projects or what you'd like to be doing in your journey?
What I'd like to be doing? I'm actually really happy to be here in Washington. I'm not just saying that. I
we are
actually
too.
do
Yeah.
like Washington. Hawaii Five-0 seems to have found its footing, so I think that's going to be going for a little bit. And this summer, I plan on being at Yongsuk for the expo, and I'm really looking forward to that. I think that's really a worthy cause, and I think a fun time. So, other than that, I've got my family in Hawaii, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Is there anything in terms of anything particular, like anyone you'd like to work with, or any type of particular program or show you want to do?
There are a lot of people I'd love to work with, but I guess in terms of what the next stage of my career is possibly doing some more smaller films. I feel like after doing 2 television series, it might be time to branch out. So we'll see. The issue is time, because the schedule of the TV show goes pretty much year-round, and so finding the right project within the hiatus is the challenge. But it's a good challenge.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. What about you for your journey next? What's going on with you?
Oh, I don't know. If you had asked me that 10 years ago, I wouldn't have given you a good answer. So whatever I tell you now would probably not turn out the way I imagined. I just want to keep having fun, meet incredible people, stay international, and even if that means still traveling the god-awful amount, 280 days a year.
How much you travel?
I travel 280 days of the year out of the country. And my poor wife has to keep the household together. But I just want to keep having fun, meeting great people. And whatever it may be. I mean, to go from banking to IT, then to distribution and publishing, it wasn't designed, I assure you. It was not a designed path, and I don't know what's next. I just want to keep having fun. Yeah, thank you.
Well, this has been amazing for me. I feel like I have learned so much this afternoon. YSG, Dr. Peter Lee, Daniel Dae Kim, thanks so much for your time, for your insight, your contributions, and we're honored to be here with you to celebrate Korean American Day. Thank you very much.
Before we ask our honorees to step down from the stage, to mark this important occasion, we would like to honor our 3 guests with an award. This award is a framed copy of the 2003 Senate resolution declaring January 13th as Korean American Day, with a plaque recognizing each of them for their contribution, thanking them for exemplifying the best what is to offer in the Korean American community and the United States, and setting an example for future leaders. So KEI's President Jack Pritchard will present the awards to our honorees. First is Dr. Peter Lee for his invaluable scholarly contribution to Korean literature and for training many future scholars of Korean history and culture. Second is Mr. YSG for his leadership in the publishing world and setting an example for us in philanthropy and for what it means to give back to the community. Thank you. And third is Mr. Daniel Dae Kim for being a pioneer for our community in TV and film and for being a role model and inspiration for many Asian American actors. Please, if we can all congratulate our distinguished honorees, and I just want, and we'll take some quick photos here. So I have three gentlemen. We'll stand up in the middle.